I wrote about what I call religious diplomacy. That is to say, not only when we're crossing ecumenical lines, like working with Roman Catholic folk if you're not Roman Catholic, or Roman Catholic folk working with evangelicals if they're not evangelicals, but also, in particular, working with Islamic folk or Buddhist folk or whatever you mean. How do you do that? Because we really have to learn how to do that well in light of the way the world is today, in light of the tensions in the world and the dangers present in the world and so on. So I wrote this article. You can get it over, just email those folks over at Bob Seifel's place, the Institute for Global Engagement. And it's going to come out in a book they're doing of essays from one of these Brandywine forums that some publisher picked up. I'm sure they send you a copy. I can send you a copy. I've got it on my computer. But more than that, I think it's standard would be two things at least. One would be expanding our knowledge base. So what I'm trying to do is to read as much as I can, for example, about Islam. And because I'm very interested, well, are these folks like Osama bin Laden and so on, do they represent Islam? Or who does represent Islam? Ayatollah Khomeini, or the folks I worked with, the imam I was working with at the Brandywine Farm, and who represents Islam, and what is Islam, and how do they carry on their faith? So I'm trying to read as much as I can, just expand my knowledge base. So if you're going to work with Roman Catholic folk, you better have Roman Catholic theology and practices, because they get bad press all the time. How many evangelical folk think that Roman Catholic folk worship Mary? They don't, but oftentimes evangelical folk will think they do. So we need to, if we're going to enter into a relationship with people ecumenically or interreligiously, we need to know the world in which they live, their history, their theology, and so on. So there's a lot of reading that needs to be done. And then the second thing, that's not enough though. The second thing is the cultivation of what I called in that article, the dialogical virtues. That there are specific virtues that human beings need to cultivate, Christian, non-Christian, Islamic, whatever. Certain dialogical virtues, so that when we talk to one another, we talk to one another safely and receptively, openly, and so on. Doesn't mean you become an intellectual pushover, for example. That's not a dialogical virtue, just to automatically speak to somebody else because you want to build a link to them. I found actually that if you surround the entire process with these dialogical virtues as character, that you can argue vociferously with people about different issues that need to be argued about. Because there's a lot of things that need to be worked out and talked about. So it would be those two things: expanding your knowledge base, expanding your character in terms of cultivation of these dialogical virtues, and then I suppose just being around people who are different from us, being in context. You all are really good at that, I would think. And then I'll try to remember to send you that article I wrote.
How do you deal with the exclusive claims of Christianity? A lot of an interfaith dialogue.
Yeah, it would be something. I found I used to work at a Jewish funeral home, California's largest funeral home, and so I was dealing with rabbis all the time, and I found that if I was polite and entered into their world and was respectful, that they were very interested in why I would think that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, and so on. I think it's a misconception to think, for example, that Islamic folk are going to be deeply offended if we're exclusivistic in terms of the claims we make about Christ. I think those who actually respect Christians less when they sense that we're waffling to try to build a bridge. Because they're not going to waffle. They have very exclusive claims about what they think. So why can't I have exclusive claims about what I think? But that doesn't mean you can't sit down and have dinner together and talk and be with one another and grow to like one another. Right? Because from my perspective, truth is inextricably linked to love. The problem is that you have people who are very concerned about truth, but are not very loving because they haven't entered into spiritual formation. Or you'll have people who are deeply loving people, but then they waffle when they shouldn't waffle. So anyway, in a nutshell. And the rabbis never expected me to waffle. They would say, what are you, a nut? I thought you were a Christian. You sound too much like me. Why are you afraid? That kind of thing. But God deliver us from Christian folk who are just mean-spirited, nasty, judgmental, condemnatory, who don't know the first thing about Islam or whatever else, and they spout things where people end up getting killed in the streets, like Franklin Graham did. Sorry to be so specific. But people die because of some of the statements that were made just off the top of one's head. That's serious business.